and welcome everyone. Today I'll just be talking about presentation on building a data warehouse BI solution in the cloud in 9 months from scratch, and all the fun and joys we had doing it over the course of this year with COVID and all the challenges of building a modern data warehouse and BI platform. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully you'll get a lot of information and some best practices out of this, and maybe even some ideas on how to tackle some of your own projects. But like I said, it was a lot of fun. So let's get into it. So excuse me a second here. So just to start with the client and the client problem statement. The client is a mid-cap 400 S&P 500 REIT, and they are heavily invested in by Warren Buffett. So they're definitely a very serious business, and basically they're all about investing in and managing properties. So they're at a stage where they had, like most companies, had siloed data, multiple orphaned spreadsheets. This was a term monitored by the CEO. He would actually talk about this in meetings, and he's kind of coined this phrase. So basically, the company's dealing with all these different spreadsheets, and they're trying to, analyze their data, but they really don't have the tools in place to do so. They did have crystal reports, but they had outgrown at the capacity of the tools. They were in the market for, a BI solution. Their vision was to have a true BI platform where they could have all their data assets together. They could do flexible reporting, self-service, information delivery, all those good things that we know a true BI platform and data warehouse can provide. They had at the beginning looked at single tool vendors. You all know who they are, and did some demonstrations and all those things with them, and basically made a decision internally that they didn't think those single tools were really going to meet their needs and their vision for the future. So they actually engaged InfoSol to help deliver a true modern data warehouse and BI platform to achieve what we all know is real BI. So we're very fortunate to work with this client, and they're a great client. It was a lot of fun. So the project started in February 2020, and it completed right up to the end of October 2020 this year. So that's a general brief on the problem statement. So let's talk about the project overview overall. What were we trying to accomplish? So the first step was to do a discovery service where we go in, meet with the different stakeholders, meet with the different departments, define the scope, define their requirements, and just understand where they are and where they're trying to get to, and then we produce a roadmap on how to get there. So the best way to go about that is a phased approach. So obviously this was just phase one of a much larger sort of program of work for their BI stack. So phase one, basically its goal, and this goal was actually reported to the board. It's actually the first time I've seen a company, and maybe I'm a little bit naive, but I've never seen a board so involved in the going-ons of a company. The executives would keep them informed of every single project you can think of, not just like from a business standpoint, but an IT standpoint. So BI was something they were extremely interested in, and they were very excited about, right from the very top all the way down. So this was almost a dream situation to be in, because you're dealing with not only very smart people at the mid-management level and below, but you're dealing with executives who know their data inside and out, and and they would keep you on your toes. So you certainly couldn't hide anything from them at all. So it was a really good situation. So for phase one, their biggest goal was, let's just get all the infrastructure and the platform set up in place to make sure everything is ready to go. and we'll have a little bit of bare bones reporting, right? Bare metal reporting is what I was calling it. And that would set them up, for then to, as they go into future phases, they're just adding little bits on and on top to of the platform, right? So it had to, not only did all the meat and guts of the system have to be in place and working correctly, but it also had to have a bit of flexibility to make all those enhancements down the road easier. So we weren't having to go through a constant implementation process when they're doing enhancements, etc. We did have to scope their source systems down. They had quite another thing with this company is a lot of their analysis isn't just internal generated data. They deal a lot with external market data too. So that influences a lot of their decision making in terms of what they're going to invest in and what they should get out of that doesn't make business sense anymore. So basically, there's a lot of different things they wanted to tackle, and to help achieve a phase one scope, the decision was made to sort of reduce that down. So we focused on the front of their house, the south, which was, they were using Salesforce. Another challenge, or probably, a challenge, but we were lucky enough because we could figure out the system, but they did have a custom internal system that handled their operations. It was essentially their ERP. This was grown in-house, developed over years, and just one of those organic systems that's constantly been added to. So there's a bit of complexity there, but we were able to tackle that. So that added quite some fun as well. One of the other challenges is they had just moved from their old GL accounting system to a new implementation of Oracle Financials Cloud. So that presented challenges in itself on how we're going to get data out of that. The only external data they did want in as part of phase one was public review data. Now, what that was is they had engaged a third-party company to basically provide them data sets on reviews, like public reviews like you and me, from Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor, on all their properties that they have out there in the US, which is a really cool data point when you think about it. They have big plans for this data. It's just the start of the external stuff. So we had to tackle that. And of course, we all know as a part of any data warehouse BI platform, as much as we try, we sometimes just can't get away from those flat files. So there were a few little ones here and there that we had to incorporate to meet scope one. And then of course, the long-term goal was to get away from them as much as possible. So at a very high level, the phases of the project, the way we went about it, of course, the discovery was very much a high level understanding of what we were going to do and what they needed and how we were going to get there. We had to then step in as part of phase one to get the low level design, right? So this is where we take those conceptual dashboards, reports, analysis, and really break it down with the business to understand, okay, well, what exactly does this look like? And that involves not only just mock-ups in terms of what things should look like, the data points themselves, and then the mappings back to the source systems. So quite a lot of heavy work up front. Again, on this project, we're extremely lucky. We had a great team in place, and we had one gentleman who was basically had come from the business. He had started in sales, ended up in the operations side, so he knew the business inside and out, and he was already very much on the front foot in understanding what the business or these different departments wanted and needed with this type of analysis. So he would do almost about 70% of the work, and then the 30% would just be going backwards and forwards with the business. So we're very lucky there. Of course, infrastructure setup, just getting all the different software pieces in place, and I'll touch on what technologies we decided to implement for this customer. There's also, we split the actual build into two parts, obviously, the data warehouse build and the BI build. Quality assurance testing, of course, UAT, and then just the go live and post implementation support. In terms of methodology, I'm a big proponent of a hybrid approach. I think there's benefits to using both waterfall and agile approach and iterative approach. So the way we would do that is basically most of the phases would follow waterfall. Outputs from one phase being inputs to another, all that great stuff. But the DW build and the BI build, more so the BI build, because that's really where the business is seeing the product. That was an iterative process. So we would produce, like an initial release, get that in front of the business, get their feedback, push that back down to the working team, and then produce that over, over the set start and end dates for that phase. Okay, so that's where I felt this hybrid approach really makes sense for data warehousing and BI. It's very different to, let's say, implementing a huge ERP system where you know what you're getting, right? You know what the screens look like. If you're getting an off-the-shelf Oracle or an off-the-shelf ERP, you want to keep it as vanilla as possible with some customizations here and there. But the screen's a screen. Just make sure these transactions are running and users can get in there and run the business. With BI, it's very much a synthesis, right? People have an idea of what they want in their brain in terms of an analysis and a dashboard. The minute you get it in front of them, they get that initial sort of reaction like, wow, okay, well, this is a little bit different to what I had in my head. That looks good. This doesn't look so good. So getting it in front of them at the beginning as quickly as possible will pay off dividends in the long run, and it will show a lot of success and a lot of trust and nice fluid interaction with the business. And of course, we can't ignore COVID. It hit March, and we're still going through it. It was a little bit of touch and go. I felt Paul might have been a little bit more confident than me, but the client was happy to proceed. They wanted to hit this goal, so we were very lucky. And of course, we moved totally to a virtual delivery. Everything was done remote. All meetings with execs, the whole lot, it was done remote. So that provided some challenges, but with the technologies today, it's 100% achievable. Yep. So anybody who's interested in the WBS, I thought I'd put this in here just so you can get a general understanding of the tasks and how we laid them out. Obviously, we use tools to manage the process, but this is generally what it looked like in terms of the entire project. Doesn't look like much on the screen, I know, but some of this is quite intricate and involved. So obviously the biggest piece here being low-level design. That's highly important, that one. All right, so let's talk about some of the tools we use and best practices. By all means, jump in and ask any questions. I think I've hit as much as I can on what I think is important. Of course, I don't know. I don't want to flood you with all the, intricate parts of the PM stuff, but basically we use a SharePoint site for all our project documentation, laid out structure just like the phases. Okay, and some of the key things we have are all the good stuff that come apart as project management. You've got your issue log, your change log, your key decision log, enhancement log, and the defect logs, of course, right? So I found that for the defect log, SharePoint already had a pre-existing template to run with. So we just activated that and went with it, and used that to manage our defects. With the issue logs, change logs, all that stuff, that's all purely management from, making sure you're documenting what you're running into, making sure you're documenting your key decisions so that if anyone comes back later and wants to understand why certain things were done, they have this frame of reference to go with, and that all went through approvals. Okay, so like I've mentioned down the bottom here, escalation points, very important. It's very important to know in your project, like who is approving what, and if things need to be escalated, what is that path? And that way, if that's laid out from the beginning, you can get quick resolution to a lot of your issues. We would have a weekly status meeting and report like all good projects. Okay, so, nothing new there. The only thing, given that it is a virtual delivery, is that we had virtual meetings via Teams, Microsoft Teams. They would be daily with the working teams, right? So the internal project team itself, who were developing, testing, we would be constantly on the phone, no matter what. I made it very clear to the team that, there should be no hesitation. If you run into an issue, or let's not wait to the next status meeting. Let's get on the phone right away. And with the technology and how small the world is today, that made things very easy for myself. We would do a bi-monthly steering committee meeting and report. So that's meeting with the execs just to make sure and report at a high level how the project is progressing. And with the iterative approach, we would meet certain goals, have hours left over for the project. We would feed that back into enhancements. And that was a continuous loop to get these deliverables to a point where the business were very happy with them. So it was important that we presented those to the execs so they would understand what is being prioritized for their departments, and make sure there was fairness. We did start with Microsoft Project for the project manager for managing the schedule and tasks and all those good things. But eventually I decided to move to a free PM tool on the web called ClickUp. So if anybody's looking for a tool to manage tasks, assign tasks, all those good things, this is a great tool that's free, up to a certain number or something like that. And it provides all the workflow and all the gadgets you could want. So here's some, try to get a couple of screenshots here of what you can work with. So you've got phase 1 here, some weekly to-dos. There's your Gantt chart here. So you've got different options in how you can separate out, like how you want to manage the project. And of course you can assign things to people, get email notifications when things are due or they're upcoming. So this was absolutely free. So I'm hoping in my future projects, I'm definitely going to try and leverage this more and more. And hopefully with this client, we can, there'll be an opportunity to do phase 2 and totally use this tool. So if anyone's looking for a free tool out there to manage work, I highly recommend this ClickUp. And just to understand a bit of the, reporting. I know this is documentation. It may be boring for some, but at a project level, these are highly important. So this was the structure we used to report to the executives. So you can see down here that we got hours left over, some estimate to complete for the different phases, and they would flow into basically, it's not really unbudgeted, it's just unplanned, right? Like, so having to manage, what enhancements are truly, what are defects and what are truly enhancements from the business. And then we would break that out by the different departments so the execs could get an understanding of, well, who's requesting what. As you can see, this particular department, they're very vested in BI, so they had a lot of different requests, etc. And then we would just break it down by different deliverables. And obviously, you're obviously progressing these to 0. So if nothing has a bar, it's done complete. Okay. So that's how we decided to. That's the format we use for the project for the steering committee meetings. Okay, let's talk about the solution architecture and what we recommended. So you can see running from left to right, we've got our source systems going into our data warehouse layers, staging area, history layer, data warehouse layer, and your BI layer. And of course, on the far right, we've got the different types of users who are interacting with the different BI deliverables or assets to achieve some of the goals and vision that we set out to accomplish. Some of these are all like external systems, so hence why I use logos, just to make sure it was very clear what was what. One thing I do want to hit on is some of you may disagree with me theoretically, but I have found that in some cases it's highly unnecessary to have a history layer or type 2 changes on every single data asset you're putting into your warehouse, purely because at the end of the day, I very rarely ran into requirements where a user wants to know at a given point in time, I want to know exactly what that record was on the 5th of May 2015. You know what I mean? So I think we were very, not cautious, but we were very deliberate in what we wanted to turn certain type 1, type 2, type 3 changes on, etc., for our different data assets and areas in the data warehouse. That's very different to, let's say, snapshotting data. Of course, we had multiple snapshots running in the data warehouse, right? So pipeline, all those things like that, where you're snapshotting at month end and all those good things. So, you know, we did have complexity there. And of course, you know, I will talk about technology soon, but just so you can see, it's probably a little bit hard to see. Sorry about that, guys, but this BI layer, the presentation layer, is SAP Business Objects Tableau, right? So you've got your ad hoc analysis, discovery, routine analysis, and the executives working with dashboards, etc. Right? So pretty clear diagram of what we're trying, of what the future state would look like for this client. One of the most important things that I think, you know, is back to the original discussion or points about a real BI platform. You know, the reason I use that term is because to me, BI is just not a single tool, okay? Like you can't, I find it, I think it's a stretch, and I find it very hard to believe that one tool can satisfy all the different components that is BI. And the most important part to me is information delivery. And that is getting data out of these systems and integrating, or even having it integrated across multiple assets, right? Which is another important part about any data warehouse, is the integration, right? Integration of multiple source system data to present a full end-to-end, you know, picture of what is happening in your business, particularly around customers, etc.
Hey, so, Tyler.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we had some questions come in that I wanted to ask before you went off.
Yeah, sure.
One, is history layer similar to SCD, slow changing dimension?
It is and it isn't. Traditionally, if you follow Kimball methodology, you know, once upon a time they would say the concept around what type 2 does, SCD type 2, they would actually recommend doing that. Let's say you've got, you know, 3 transaction tables and 2 reference data tables from a source system. In some cases, or most cases, they would actually recommend capturing any changes on those records at a history layer. And then you've also got that in the dimensions, right? So we did have that in dimensions, but Kimball actually recommended that on transaction tables as well. So what I was just trying to say was we didn't go down that approach. We had, you know, SCD type 2 changes on our dimensions, and we would have snapshots, and that was pretty much it. Hopefully that answered the question.
Awesome. And then one more here. Between the source systems and the staging layer, how many tools were used to ingest the data?
Just one. Yeah, just one. I'll touch on it later, but it was SAP Data Services. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, just one. However, there are some, I will touch on some of the challenges on how to get some of the data out, because as some of you out there probably know, as wonderful as cloud technology is, it is very challenging for some of these tools to get data out, which I find absolutely kind of crazy, right? Because as a company, you're paying these cloud systems to manage your data. Why is it so difficult to get it out? Okay, so we were dealing with some of those challenges too, but I'll touch on how we did that in later slides. So again, back to one of the key elements of a good BI platform, is information delivery. You know, and here InfoBurst was the tool where we're taking data from our BI system, our data warehouse, and we're distributing that to basically just consumers, people who just really have no reason to have access to the BI tool. They don't need to create reports. They just need to be informed, okay? And this is why information delivery is such a vital key asset in a BI platform, not because you're just distributing information. You're catering to an audience with it. And you're also catering to an audience who really, you know, if they're not using the tools and they don't need to use the tools, why should you have to pay licensing for them, right? So this is a great way to reduce your licensing costs and still be getting value add out of your data, the data from your business systems and your BI platform. Yep. Okay. So the technologies, it's important to highlight that this was all, none of these tools were implemented on premise. It was all on VM clouds or in Azure. So that made the client extremely happy that we were able to achieve that. So we've got our data warehouse, which is just an Azure Cloud SQL database. It was a managed SQL instance. There were some questions around whether or not that was going to work with the technologies we suggested from an ETL standpoint and a BI reporting standpoint, but it did. So that was great. The ETL software we recommended was SAP Data Services. For those who may not be as familiar with that tool, it's the old data integrator tool, BusinessObjects data integrator tool. It still is one of the best ETL tools I've worked with. The reason being is with the certain functionality in that tool, such as template tables, where it's generating SQL on the fly, it cuts your development time basically in half, I feel. So you're able to get a lot of your mappings up and running within a short amount of time. Okay, so speed is key, right? Because you've got to get the data out of the systems in front of you, like to look at, even if you're looking at it in not in the BI tool, but like SQL Management Studio or something like that. Based on what you have recommended from your low-level design, so you can see, okay, does this data make sense? And because we had such a crack team or good team in place, even myself, because I'd been lucky enough to work with the client and understand their data, we could easily see if some of this data was wrong or didn't make sense, were these numbers not matching at a high level, aggregated level, so we could go back, work with the ETL developer and make those adjustments very quickly, okay? So again, a dream situation where all the different people involved in the team had expertise and brought something to the table and were able to resolve any issues very quickly and any problems very quickly. The BI and reporting tool that we chose, BusinessObjects, 4.2 SV8. BusinessObjects, it's been around for a long time and it's still one of the greatest BI tools out there, in my opinion. With the semantic layer, universes, all that good stuff, and it is the most equipped for self-service in my travels. And on top of that, we can integrate it with InfoBurst Enterprise to do all the information delivery. So SAP BusinessObjects was chosen to do BI and reporting. For dashboards, we decided to go with Squirrel. At the beginning, I remember sitting down with one of the stakeholders of the project, and we were looking at Tableau and Squirrel side by side. They were already using Tableau desktop. So that was a part of the technology stack, but there was a decision whether or not we should go with just full Tableau or do we bring in Squirrel. And when we sat down and looked at one of the deliverables from a conceptual perspective, and we started to look at it, as we looked at how they wanted to interact with this particular dashboard, Squirrel made more sense at that point than Tableau. So we decided Squirrel would come into the mix, and it was able to deliver for the client two of the flagship deliverables that basically impressed everyone. So it's a great tool, and we're happy it was a part of the stack. So again, data discovery is still involved, right? So there are obviously pockets of the business who want that visualization tool to be able to do their own ad hoc analysis from a data discovery perspective and be able to visualize things quickly. And we have the added benefit that we have InfoBurst tab along with that. So the information delivery aspect, we're using InfoBurst Enterprise, and then we have the tab edition where we can integrate between SAP BusinessObjects and Tableau. So it provides that gateway to all those data assets with all those multiple source systems. So I guess there's probably going to be questions around this tool set here. Anna Laura, are there?
We actually had one question from your slide before, I believe. What type of dimension model was used?
So it's Kimball dimension. It's all Kimball star schema based. So dimensions and fact table in the middle with surrogate keys. And then we would have either type 1 or type 2 changes on our dimensions. And then in the fact tables, it would either be transactional, where you just either truncate reloading, or periodic snapshots, where we're closing date, we're loading current data every day for the month, then we lock at the end of the month, and then we skip over to a new month, and that becomes a new record. We change every day and then lock that for the month, okay? So we were snapshotting a lot of statistical data for customers, properties, and leases. They were the 3 big dimensions.
Great, and then we did have 2 questions based on what you were showing. Does SAP Data Services work with Snowflake? If so, how easy is the integration?
Oh, that's a good question. I have been told from colleagues that it does integrate with Snowflake, but the performance is not great. So what I would like to do for this one, Laura, is maybe if I could take this one away and do a bit more research and come back to that attendee and let everyone know what I find out. But that's all I know from a high level standpoint.
Okay, that works.
Is that okay? Yep.
Yep, that works. And let's see here. There was another question here. Does InfoBriz tab something like a BI Launchpad, which holds reports and dashboards from both BO and Tableau? Question mark.
Great question. I actually have a slide on a concept about a landing page, but I guess I think it's fair to say out of the box, we don't quite at the moment have a landing page where all those BI assets you can just easily access from one area. But we are working with this client to produce a prototype of sorts, with the hope that down the road, this would be something we could actually produce for clients as a supported piece of software. I hope that was a good answer, Paul.
And then we did have another question come in here. They said, seems like a huge effort. Can I ask the size for the ETL team and BA?
One thing I haven't shown you is actually how big the team was. So it does look like a lot of effort from what I'm explaining, but I guess we were very blessed with the fact that I had worked with the client before, so I knew the data just as well as some of the business. So I was able to help tremendously with just the small internal team. So we had the VP, which acted as a project manager. That was the client. He was a part of the client. There was myself, the solution architect. There was a BI developer who was the gun who came from the business. He acted as the business analyst as well. There was one person from the InfoSol team who was the ETL developer. And then there was a SQL DBA. And then there was a dashboard developer too who helped us, did a great job. So we really only had about a team of 7. So the BA was the BI developer, okay? And he had great relationships with the business. And we'd also take a lot of direction from the executives. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. We have 2 more, but we are running short on time here. So I'm just going to try to get these 2. And then if any other come in, maybe if you have time to stay on and just, type your answers.
Yeah, no problem. I'll try and speed up you guys because I think it's important we get to the challenges. So at the end, the key deliverables were a platform, okay, the infrastructure, all the good things that come with that. We had 21 reports, dashboards we had to deliver. There were 2 flagship Squirrel dashboards. One they call a credit watch list. You can think of this like a customer naughty list. I don't know how they would feel about me describing it that way, but basically it helps them understand those that are trending on the poor side versus the better side. And it was designed around the flow of a monthly internal meeting, which is really cool. So the way you interacted with the dashboard is how the meeting flows. I thought that was a great way to design it. There was a tear sheet dashboard, basically customer 360 view. We integrated it across the three systems. It had Salesforce data, ERP operations data, financial data, all for one customer. Okay, so quite impressive. Acquisitions dashboard, just a sales dashboard. Private equity, which is important. That was a new analysis. There was the portfolio performance model report. We basically automated one of the most complex manual spreadsheets they had in the business. That was quite tough. And then there's an ad hoc data discovery report where they can look at property across states and use weather data to understand, when it was getting to winter months, and because of COVID, they could see which of their properties would be affected, in terms of business. Like if they're still locked down and they're having to eat outside, are there really going to be people eating out in minus something degree weather? Okay. All right, let's talk about the challenges. Oracle Financials Cloud integration. Okay, so out of the box, Oracle Fusion has APIs and a cloud connector that are supposed to provide access to data from that cloud system. However, when we were working with it, and particularly the data we were after, the accounts receivable subledger, we were running short and running into issues. We couldn't get it to work. So we fell back on the traditional, good old-fashioned way of basically building reports in their internal BI miniature system they have as part of the cloud software, where we would have simple reports that were list-based reports, export that as flat files to a file share, and then data services would pick that data up. And given there wasn't no need for real-time data, overnight was fine. Their customer master data. This is probably one of the bigger challenges. One of the goals was to see integrated data from sales all the way to operations. Okay, so customer master lives in two different systems. They start in sales, either deals are go ahead or they don't, and then deals that do go ahead, obviously they go into operations. So multiple systems had that data. Okay, so we had to figure out how to make sure that was able to integrate. The other goal was private equity relationship analysis. So being able to know of those customers, which other customers had investing relationships or ownership of these other customers. So we had a many-to-many situation, right? So we had to deal with that too. So basically what we did is we just introduced a hierarchy into Salesforce, had a custom field. We couldn't do a hard link because given for scope one, we thought that was just going to be too much work. So what we did is we just had a soft link where a person in the business was responsible for populating that data, and that way we'd have both systems linked. They were trying to do this earlier, but they had no system to monitor this data for them. So with the help of InfoBurst, we introduced a data quality check where every morning a report would run and tell them, okay, where are the exceptions between these customers? And that way they're on top of the data and they can easily add those IDs. To solve the private equity relationship challenge, we basically implemented Salesforce account partners. This basically allows many relationships between account data in Salesforce, and we just created a role called private equity sponsor. So you've got the private equity owner going down and basically the holding going up. So we were able to get that many-to-many relationship. Business was very happy about that one. Okay, property sales. Once again, we had a situation where we needed to understand across customers, where we had a sale and then we operated the property and then we got rid of the property. We want to be able to see that data integrated. Property sales is managed by a custom object in Salesforce. There's no hard link between the systems. It's manually populated. And on top of that, it was one field where they populated, since one deal you can sell multiple properties, there was one big concatenated string with a comma in between for the property IDs. Okay, so very challenging. So what we decided to do was just extend those fields, have them as separate individual fields. We wanted to go a line item table approach, but we were told we couldn't do that with this particular object in Salesforce. So if you're looking to do the same thing, by all means, please look at the line item, header line item situation. That would have been far better for this situation, but we couldn't do it. So next best option was individual fields. We use SQL to extract the data, transpose it, clean it, and then upload it back to Salesforce. And then we were able to build a SQL view that transposed that again. So you could have that one deal by each property and get the link back to the operational system. Okay. So provided that nice tight integration. Okay. All right. The BI landing page. So back to this question before. So again, customer asks for, we need a single web page to provide, access to all these different reports and dashboards at a user by user basis, right? So security is kicking in. Since there's multiple technologies, BusinessObjects, Squirrel, Tableau, there is nothing in either of those individual tools that can really accomplish this. And on top of that, we needed an ACL concept with Windows AD, right? So this thing needed to know, the landing page needs to know who was logged in and what did they have access to. So in the short amount of time that we had left in the scope of things, we came up with a very, I would call kind of like a semi-prototype-ish solution where we just built another Squirrel dashboard. It had like a tile concept, and I actually show it here. It looked like this, right? You've got tiles that are links to all the different dashboards and reports. And that was maintained by an Excel. I think there was a macro on Excel where it would spit out who had access to what. We would then feed that into a SQL table. InfoBurst, Squirrel could then interrogate that table. And then we were able to use a JavaScript wrapper, HTML, to pass the Windows user as a variable to the Squirrel dashboard. Okay, so that's how we knew who was logged in. You can see on the example here, my name on the top right. So that's my Windows account. It would then check against the Excel and present what I had access to as tiles. And based on that, we've had internal discussions and we are working currently with this customer, on whether we can build a longer term solution by enhancing the InfoBurst portal. But again, guys, that's in very early days on that. So just stay tuned and we'll see where we can land on that one. And then next steps for the project, now that it's live, they're pretty excited. So phase 2, in turn, there's discussions are happening right now. Basically, they just want to expand and extend it. So one of the big things is they want to automate their board page presentations. So that's going to be an interesting challenge. We believe we definitely can do it, but it's probably not as much fun as some of the other things they want to do, but it is an important key part that the executive team want to see. Of course, more reports and dashboards for departments. A big thing that I mentioned before was enhancements. If you're running a data warehouse BI platform project, enhancements are key to the source systems, because a lot of the analysis they may want to achieve, they can't readily do now because they don't have the data points in their systems. So that is something that we actually actively manage as a part of the project. And there's a whole slate of enhancements that need to be done that have been listed and how to achieve them to achieve some of the further analysis they would like to do. And the biggest thing is third-party data integrations. So all these systems here, some of them you may be familiar with. You've got CoStar, which is external real estate data. There's Moody's Credit Lens, which basically allows them to understand a company's credit and are they in good financial standing. They can produce EDFs with that. Capital IQ, I believe, is where you go to find public trading, information on companies that are publicly traded, I believe. So they want to get that data in. The census API, so census data, demographics, all that good stuff. KeyBank, which is a servicer, so that's a lot about how they collect rent. And SafeGraph. Now, I've been told that SafeGraph is kind of like GPS data and foot traffic data at like restaurants and things. So they want to be able to tell another data point, for certain properties, what is the foot traffic data and how is that trending? So again, that all falls into models of, how well are these properties and customers performing that are in our portfolio. And then the further phases will be predictive analysis and mobility. Of course, predictive analysis you can't really achieve until you hit all these data points that could fold into, what may or may not make a property and a customer successful for this client. Yeah, and that's pretty much the presentation. I hope